Well, good morning, and thank you for joining us here on Live Impact News. I'm Eugene Daniel, coming to you live from our streaming studio in Hampton Roads, Virginia, here at 13 News Now. Across from me is producer Sarah Calloway and meteorologist Craig Moeller, who both had very busy days yesterday. I did not.
Yeah,
I happened to be off.
Where were you?
I happened to be off, after some busy days last week, but I know you all... Great job, because I know you put in a lot of work yesterday with those storms. And Craig, when I went to sleep yesterday, really even before I went to sleep, because I was up way past my bedtime, when I tell you the wind was howling off of my window pane, and it was strong where I was in Norfolk.
Really interesting day.
Yes.
All right, so you did pick a great day to take off if you didn't want to have a super long day. For those of us that were here, I was here till about 2:30 in the afternoon. We did Live Impact News, actually 2 hours worth at this time, covering the storms. And then even after the noon show, I stayed, did another 45 minutes or so. Following that, Evan and Tim carried the bulk of the heavy carrying through the late afternoon. It was interesting, Sarah, as we talked about this, there were areas of rain that became widespread. It kind of stabilized the atmosphere a little bit before what could have been a potentially more serious round came in late afternoon. So in some ways, even though we did have some storm damage, even though, there was wind damage, some parts of Virginia Beach down into North Carolina, power outages in Suffolk, some different areas, it could have been a lot worse. And I'm grateful that it wasn't. So I'll start with that. Now, yesterday, the high temperature officially was 74 degrees. That was in the forecast. We hit that on the money. We picked up 3/4 of an inch of precipitation. So a little bit more than what we were going. We were saying maybe a 1/2 inch to 6/10. Came in just a little bit above that. And there were actually a few flood advisories and I think a couple of flash flood warnings as well yesterday afternoon. As we take a look now, the concern, now that the system has cleared the area, we had some gusty winds on the backside of that front, and we still have northwest winds gusting up to about 28, almost 30 miles an hour up at Wallops. We've seen gusts 20 to 25 around Newport News, down towards Franklin. We've seen some higher gusts in Portsmouth, back around Virginia Beach. Earlier this morning, Eugene, during daybreak, we had at one point a gust of 35 miles per hour.
Okay.
So again, the winds not as strong as they were, but still gusting 20 to 25. Now, look at this temperature change. I mentioned 74 for a high yesterday. We are down 30 degrees from this time yesterday, so it is chilly. Air temperatures right now in the upper 30s and inland areas in the mid to upper 30s. You factor in the winds, it's feeling like 27 right now in Franklin. 28, you're shaking your head.
I am shaking my head. This is not the St. Patrick's Day I was hoping for.
You know what, though, with the sunshine, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
Again, we're not sweating out storms today. We do have the sunshine in the forecast. Make sure you've got a coat and make sure you got your sunglasses throughout the day. Now, the forecast, we're looking for highs today in the upper 40s, some inland areas close to 50, especially in North Carolina. Look at our temperature trend here over the next 10 days. This is the time of year where the temperatures start to recover. Then you collapse with another push of cold air. Then they start to recover again. We kind of get these waves going a little bit. Look a little bit like that Ophelia video from Taylor Swift. Tried to get Sarah while she was drinking. She almost had to come out her nose. All right. Anyway, I won't reference Taylor anymore this update. Temperatures close to 70 by the weekend. Much colder Tuesday and then back up around 70 the following Thursday and Friday. So we do have that up-down pattern. Looking out through the end of March, I think we'll be close to average for precip. And here, temperatures also pretty close to normal. And our normal high is now 60. So we're talking low to mid 60s as we finish out the month of March. It will be above average out west. They've had warmer conditions out that way. Yesterday, gale warnings were up. Today, small craft advisories. Wind's still a little gusty out there on the water. The seas and the waves will be calming a little bit later today, but small crafts still want to stay in port. Now, Eugene, I don't know if you suffer allergies at all.
I don't.
Okay, good for you. You know your coworker, Ashley Smith.
Terrible.
Your TV wife, has the sneezes and sniffles a lot. As I get some congestion, irritation. I think Marta does as well. So Eugene is blessed that he doesn't deal with that. But for the rest of us, tree pollen, moderate today. It will be building in the coming days. So just know, as nice as our weather looks over the next few days, the trees are going to open up more. We're going to see more pollen release, and this is the time of year where we start to see that. We do have high pressure building in, and the front is through the area. So let's pick up the future cast and talk about what's coming up next. Plenty of sunshine through the afternoon. Temperatures into the upper 40s. We'll see a few clouds drift by this evening. And then for tomorrow, we're going to see temperatures starting off chilly once again in the morning, 20s inland, 30s near the coast. Afternoon highs only in the mid-40s, low 40s right along the beaches. Another really chilly day, even a bit cooler than today. After that, though, the temperatures start to trend the other way. We'll warm it back up into the 50s Thursday and then 60s on Friday. So there's a look at the south side temperatures, upper 40s to near 50 across the south side. We'll see slightly cooler conditions over to the eastern shore, still breezy around Cape Charles. I'd say the bay side of the eastern shore with northwest winds. Look for the breezier conditions there. I'm thinking like Nassawatic, some of the other communities kind of up and down the eastern shore. Looking up to the peninsula, the middle peninsula, upper 40s, and down across North Carolina, low 50s inland, upper 40s at the Outer Banks. Tonight's low down around 32, mostly clear, even chillier inland. We'll see 20s inland. And then tomorrow back up to around 45 degrees or so. And that may be a little generous. Some coastal areas probably low 40s. Chilly day tomorrow, some more clouds, but after that, we turn that corner and we start to warm it up. Thursday back into the 50s, 60s on Friday, then upper 60s Saturday, and near 70 on Sunday.
Bring it on Saturday and Sunday. I tell you what, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, we had the storms obviously yesterday. I feel so bad for Franklin right now. 27 it feels like out there, but
it'll get
70.
Warmer.
Let's bring it.
It'll get warmer eventually. Now again today, breezy and cool, but the winds are going to relax. So folks going out to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, you've got good conditions. We always encourage everybody to celebrate safely. Eugene,
plenty of people drinking hot chocolate today.
Lots
anyway.
of hot chocolate.
Lots of
today.
hot chocolate
no
today.
No beer or corned beef. Cabbage
just
and all that good
hot
stuff.
chocolate.
Just lots of hot chocolate today. I'm going to go find some hot chocolate later today. Wanted to mention baseball season just around the corner.
Yeah.
We were talking about Tides and what their openings.
Yep, they're
next
opening
week.
up on
the
it's a week and a half from now.
Yeah, like
so,
the 26th or
yeah,
something?
27th, I believe, is the actual date against Nashville.
All right.
I believe it's going to be opening night, and there's a lot of things going on that they're offering new now within the Arbor Park that we're really excited about. They can have live music outside of the games. We have everything now with the interim gaming facilities, so there's some collaboration there. And obviously
so the
HRT.
Boys of Summer coming back. We've got spring starting in 4 days, so
Hey,
we are turning the corner.
We are. I hope so. What base would this be? Second base?
No, we're heading to first. We're going to
heading
run
to
through
first?
the bag.
Okay.
Let's get through. Let's get
Okay.
through. This weekend and or the next couple of days. We'll warm it up to spring. Then we'll make the turn towards summer. We'll round first and go for second.
We need to get a pinch runner in here ASAP. Get a pinch
for sure.
runner.
I think a lot of folks ready for the warm up. But again, given everything that we dealt with yesterday, if today it's just breezy and cool, we'll take the sunshine.
Definitely will. All right, Craig. We appreciate you. Are always sunshine to our stream. How about that? We're feeling the love this morning. All right, we appreciate you, Craig, and hopefully, seriously, when we talk about the tides and everything, you can really get ready for a great season. There are going to be some great things that are coming up. I also will be remiss, just speaking of things coming up, tomorrow we're going to have a great event here for us at 13 News Now with our Pause for Charity event, where you can help us partner with Hope for Life Rescue and help local animals in our community. That is going to be tomorrow. We have a whole slate of things that are ready for you, and we'll be raising, I believe our goal is $30,000 to help
Is
those
Marta
pups
going
tomorrow.
back out there
Marta
again?
is going
Yeah.
back out. She's going to be,
The
with
million-dollar
them.
question,
Yes.
will she adopt a dog? Because Marta goes out there and she falls in love with all the puppies and the cats that she plays with.
I would say don't bet against it.
She's got Linus. She's got a dog already, but it's always interesting as she bonds. And then the other big question, Eugene, I mean, you've kind of
They almost got me last year.
Yeah.
They almost got me last year. I
Probably-
mean, we got really close to the fact I was even, having some discussions, got the whole one of the puppies.
It's a lot of
close.
responsibility.
It is.
But again, it is a great cause, and we'll be raising money to support Paws for Charity.
Yeah. So that's tomorrow. We're going to have a lot more on that tomorrow, but I want to make sure it's on your minds. And we do have that QR code that is already available and online, 13newsnow.com, if you want to hear about it early and go ahead and start donating to help us tomorrow.
Daybreak.
And tune in to Break.
Who doesn't love to see puppies? We're going to have puppies on the air. We got enough heavy news. Let's have some puppies.
Craig and puppies. All right, Craig, man, we appreciate you so much. I think right now, let's give a quick little tease to what we have coming up. Right now, here's some things that are happening. We have on the Senate floor, the debate is expected to begin soon on U.S. citizenship voting requirements. There's legislation on that is going to be the point of discussion today. We're waiting for Republican GOP leaders to also give some updates. They're going to have their morning press conference here in just a moment. And you are taking a live look there at the House Armed Services Committee. They're hearing from military officials this morning who are testifying about the budget for our military and then also some challenges that are facing the Western Hemisphere from their perspective. Okay, we do need to take a quick break here at 10:12. But we'll be right back and we'll hit one of those big issues. Welcome back, and you are watching Live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. We're going to take you to D.C. Again, I showed you there are three things that we're currently monitoring. One, we're waiting to hear from Republican leadership this morning. A press conference, as there are a wide array of issues that we expect to hear from them today, ranging from the war in Iran to some of the issues we're still seeing with that partial government shutdown, impacting our travel with delays and TSA agents still not being paid. And then you see there on the Senate floor, there's discussion that is happening this morning today through our Senate on U.S. citizenship voting requirements, legislation facing that, and the House Armed Services Committee hearing from military officials this morning testifying on the budget. We're going to start there at the House Armed Services Committee. Listen to what they are having to say, the questions that are being asked in regards to our military, particularly as we know this ongoing war with Iran continues.
And in just 14 months, we have achieved historic accomplishments that put America first, Americans first, and the Americas first in U.S. national security. In my written statement, I outlined several of these accomplishments in line with the 2025 National Security Strategy and the 2025 National Defense Strategy. For my opening statement, I'd like to provide a quick summary. And it begins with our southern border. As President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have said, border security is national security, which is why my first official trip last year was to Fort Huachuca in Arizona to visit Joint Task Force Southern Border. They took me to the front line of our southwest border in Nogales, where I was able to meet with soldiers of the 2nd Stryker Brigade Combat Team. Seeing strikers on our southern border for some can seem surreal, but for our department, it illustrates how we've managed to seal the southwest border in record time by using deterrence and close partnership with federal law enforcement. Today, the department maintains over 12,000 service members along our southern border and has established 6 national defense areas covering 845 miles, or 42% of the border across Arizona, California, New Mexico, and Texas. The military innovation is matched by investments in cutting-edge technology and infrastructure, including to counter unmanned aerial threats and additional miles of border barrier. The result is turning record illegal mass migration experienced during the Biden administration into the lowest recorded border encounters in history.
We're going to come back to that. Just because we saw Senate Majority Leader John Thune, he is speaking right now on the Senate floor. So we're going to go to him, listen to what he has to say, then we'll bounce back.
18 days, Mr. President. 18 days for Democrats to even bother replying. And that offer, Democrats' third, was basically the same as their first 2 offers. No compromise, and still filled with a number of non-starters that would make it more dangerous for law enforcement officers to do their jobs. Meanwhile, on the Senate floor, the best Democrats have been able to offer is funding some DHS agencies and leaving others unfunded. It's really pretty remarkable, Mr. President. Last summer, Democrats threw a fit over Republicans' rescissions package that cut just $9 billion in federal spending, a fraction of a fraction of a percent of the entire federal budget. Now, to hear Democrats talk, they seem to think that entire agencies, especially the agencies that secure our border and enforce immigration laws, are dispensable. The Democrat leader had the audacity to call this a moderate plan last week. Mr. President, when did defunding law enforcement become a mainstream position in this country? Now, this might be considered moderate for Democrats, but I think the average American would view it as extreme. Mr. President, we are now a month into Democrats' second shutdown since October. And like their record-long shutdown in the fall, the victims of this shutdown are beginning to pile up. TSA agents are working without pay. A significant number of agents are calling out sick, leading to long wait times and lines stretching into airport parking garages. CBS reports that 300 TSA agents have quit since this shutdown began. And that's on top of the 1,100 agents who quit after Democrats shut down in the fall. And it's pretty darn understandable, if you think about it. What do you do when, for 2 out of the last 6 months, you have to work without pay? Well, that's what Democrats have put these people through. So it's more than understandable that they might be thinking that there's got to be an easier way to earn a living. I heard from one TSA agent in South Dakota who was at the end of her rope. She writes, and I quote, "It is very hard to live without getting paid. I do not know how long I can keep doing this," end quote. Well, that's what happens, Mr. President, in a shutdown. Real people get hurt. But if you ask the senior senator from Democrat, a member of the Democrat leadership, he says, and I quote, "We are very serene with what is going on," end quote. Very serene, Mr. President. I suppose that's not a surprising statement considering the Democrat leader characterized Democrats' last shutdown in the fall by saying, and I quote, "Every day gets better for us," end quote. Very serene. Every day gets better for us. For Democrats, a government shutdown is just fine as long as it seems to be working for them politically, no matter whether it's hurting hardworking Americans, no matter if it's jeopardizing public safety and national security. And Mr. President, make no mistake, Democrats' shutdown is harming hardworking Americans and putting national security in jeopardy. Our country is facing a heightened threat environment right now. Here are a few examples of that. Stryker, a medical tech company, was the victim of an Iran-linked cyber attack last week. ISIS-inspired individuals attempted to detonate bombs targeting protesters outside the home of the mayor of New York City last weekend. And on Thursday, we saw 2 tragic attacks take place. One of those in Virginia was perpetrated by an individual who was arrested in 2016 for attempting to provide material support to ISIS. The other, an attack on a Detroit area synagogue, was perpetrated by an individual who was reported to have had connections to known or suspected Hezbollah terrorists. Mr. President, this is no time for Democrats' political games. Republicans are at the table and ready to work whenever Democrats are done playing. Mr. President, today we are kicking off an extended debate on the Save America Act, a package of common sense measures united around 2 themes: protecting our elections and protecting our youth. You're going to hear me use the adjective common sense a lot in this debate, Mr. President, because if there's any word that is suitable to describe the measures we're considering, it's that. Mr. President, if there's anything essential to the integrity of elections, it's ensuring that those who are registered to vote are eligible to vote, and that those who show up to vote at polling places are those who they say they are. And how do you do that? Well, by requiring that Americans show proof of citizenship when they register to vote, and that they show photo ID at polling places. That's what the Save America Act would do.
And you're listening there to the debate. That is from the Republicans in this SAVE Act, right? And looking at changing the rules when it comes to eligibility for voting. We're going to get into that, but I need to also show you that the GOP leadership, they have now shown up to the podium. This is in the House. Obviously, you're listening to the leader there in the Senate. Before we go to them, I need to tell you about something that just broke. We just learned that the senior U.S. intelligence official that was appointed by President Trump has resigned abruptly, saying on X just moments ago that he cannot support the war in Iran. This is, you're looking at it, Joe Kent here. Again, this was appointed by the president, President Trump, saying that after much reflection, saying that he has decided to resign as director of the National Counterterrorism Center effective today, saying, I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. He also added a letter that is down there as well that you can see. Again, he posted this on X just moments ago with his reasoning at the moment there. Of course, this is going to be something that is going to be followed throughout the day. I know that there have been a few requests to hear from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. We have not yet heard from them in their response. Now, if you recall, this has been a consistent thing that the Trump administration has said, is that, you know, they needed to make sure that Iran could not have nuclear weapons or rebuild nuclear weapons, to make sure that there was no threat to the United States. Here you have one of the senior Trump officials resigning, saying that there was no such imminent threat of the United States. So that is a big deal that will be followed up on here later on throughout the day and moving forward. But for right now, let's go ahead and we notice, we see House leadership that is still speaking. I don't know if Senator Thune, I think Senator Thune's done. So let's go to the House GOP leadership and hear what they are saying at this moment.
In Port Huron, arrested for fraud. A woman in Sandusky, Michigan, also arrested for fraud, right? And that's just in my home state of Michigan. I could keep going without, keep going and going. I mean, this is happening in just my state. I can't even imagine. I mean, we'd be here all day if we had to talk about what's happening in Whip Emer State, right? Minnesota. We wouldn't have enough time. But despite what the liberal media wants you to believe, these are people that law enforcement are targeting, and law enforcement is actually holding these people accountable who have committed crimes against law-abiding Americans. Those are the people that the Democrats want to protect. This is exactly the people Republicans are making sure will never, ever be welcome back here again. Listen, the United States is the most generous nation in the world, but our generosity should never be mistaken for weakness. When people exploit our system, when they steal from our programs meant to help the most vulnerable Americans, when they commit fraud against our families, they undermine the trust that holds these programs and institutions together. And they take resources from Americans. So let me put it really simply. The Biden administration let a lot of these bad people in, like 20 million of them. Terrorists, fraudsters, violent criminals. And now Democrats are playing political games to protect the bad guys and let the American citizens fall to the wayside? Tell me how that makes sense. That needs to end, and that needs to end now. Fund our homeland security. Deport violent criminals. Keep foreign fraudsters out of our country. These are common sense principles nearly every single law-abiding American citizen agrees with. It's time Democrats in Washington started supporting Americans too. And with that, I'll hand it over to Congresswoman from New York, Claudia Tenney.
Good morning. Thank you to my colleagues and to everyone here. This is an important piece of legislation. I want to thank everyone here who's supporting it and highlighting it. The Deporting Fraudsters Act addresses a serious problem. Individuals who come to our country and steal from American taxpayers should not be allowed to remain in our country. This legislation ensures that illegal aliens who defraud the United States government or unlawfully receive taxpayer-funded benefits are inadmissible and deportable under federal law. Current immigration law leaves gaps that allow bad actors to exploit public programs without facing appropriate consequences. This bill closes those gaps and ensures individuals who steal benefits intended for needy American citizens face removal. We have already seen why action is needed. Independent journalist Nick Shirley helped expose a massive fraud scheme showing how organized and widespread these scams can become even when oversight fails. Fraud targeting programs like Social Security, SNAP, and Medicare does not affect just a government budget. It harms seniors who spend their lives paying into these programs, working families trying to get ahead, and vulnerable Americans who rely on these resources. This is not an isolated problem. Last fall, I blew the whistle on Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, exposing how one physician in his 80s billed Medicare over $600 million over the course of the Biden administration, basically from 21 through 2024, with 95% of billings concentrated in the Los Angeles County area. That level of abuse is unacceptable and underscores how vulnerable these programs are without strong accountability. Entering this country illegally is already a crime. Turning programs meant to help our truly needy citizens into vehicles for large-scale fraud is even worse. Those who steal from hardworking Americans must be held accountable and should not be allowed to remain in the United States. The Deporting Fraudsters Act restores fairness, protects taxpayer dollars, and reinforces the rule of law. I'm here today to support this legislation and look forward to working with my colleagues to make sure we get it across the finish line. And I yield to Mr. Emmer.
Thanks, Claudia. Last week, 2 separate terrorists targeted Americans at a synagogue in Michigan and in a classroom in Virginia. Our prayers are with the family of Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw, who was tragically killed by the monster who opened fire at Old Dominion University. The profile of the ODU terrorist is troubling. A naturalized citizen from Sierra Leone, convicted of attempting to support ISIS in 2016, released from prison early by the Biden administration in 2024, only to carry out a terrorist attack in 2026. The writing was on the wall. Yet the Biden administration's soft on terrorism policies and our nation's current immigration laws let this ISIS-affiliated individual stay in America and walk free. An American life was lost as a direct result. It's common sense that any naturalized citizen who joins or supports a designated terrorist organization should be denaturalized and deported. But under current law, it's virtually impossible to do so. That's why Senator Eric Schmitt and I introduced the SCAM Act earlier this year. This legislation will make it easier to strip terrorists of their citizenship and ship them back to where they came from. It's simple. Terrorists do not belong on U.S. soil, naturalized or not. As our nation faces varying threats, I will remind you that the Democrats have now shut down the Department of Homeland Security for over a month. Airports across the country are feeling the impact. On Friday, TSA workers received $0 paycheck because Democrats continue to block DHS funding. More than 300 TSA officers have quit since the start of this shutdown, the second Democrat shutdown in just 6 months. And can you blame them? Because of the Democrats' reckless political games, the men and women of TSA have been forced to work without pay for 43% of this fiscal year. 43%. It's almost half. Democrats are playing political games while these TSA officers struggle to put food on the table, pay the mortgage, and take care of their families. It's cruel, it's dangerous, and it's time for this to end. Democrats could stop this immediately today if they wanted to. I hope they do. And with that, I turn over to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. We have a number of things that we're doing this week. We are tomorrow bringing a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution, a really important debate to have to, number one, do here in Washington what every state in America does, and that is require fiscal discipline, that at the end of each fiscal year we balance our books, just like families do every year. Those conversations around a kitchen table where you talk about making priorities and ultimately fund the things that are most important, and based on how much money you have coming in, you don't spend more than you take in. Shouldn't Washington have not only that same debate, but that same requirement in the United States Constitution? It's going to be a really critical vote to watch on the House floor. Who stands for fiscal discipline and who wants to continue recklessly spending other people's money? That will happen tomorrow. You already heard about the efforts we're going to continue to take to root out fraud in America, to protect taxpayer money, especially from people who come here illegally and then abuse this very country and the wonderful things that these people do in this country to help welcome people, but yet those that take advantage of us should have no place here. You're going to see that vote as well. But you're also going to see the Democrats start trying to shift blame as the final results of what they've done to shut down the Department of Homeland Security become evident to all Americans. Anybody who flies on a plane now knows what the Democrats have done with the Department of Homeland Security shutdown. At my home airport in New Orleans, you had lines wrapped around the airport all the way into the parking garage. People waiting over 3 hours and missing flights because Democrats want to have yet another tantrum. It's not the first time that they've tried to spark chaos in the country. As the Whip said, it's the second shutdown they've had in just 6 months. Because Democrats don't want to govern. Democrats are not capable of governing. They just want chaos in America. And it's hurting real Americans all across this nation. Obviously, it starts with those workers that aren't getting paid, that have to show up. And we see it at the airports with TSA agents. Over 100,000 employees of the Department of Homeland Security are working without pay because Democrats don't care about people. And this week, you're going to hear him talking about a discharge petition. Let me tell you what that is. It's yet another attempt by Democrats to defund the police. It's a defund the police discharge. That's what it is. Why? Because go back to the Summer of Love. You know, when people were burning down cities, Democrats' crazy idea was to defund the police. They tried it. The American people recognized it for what it is, one of the dumbest political ideas maybe in the history of American politics. But the Democrats aren't done with it. Now that you're in another moment of Democrat-created chaos, what is their answer? To defund law enforcement again. That's what their petition does. The American people aren't going to be fooled by it. We don't fund agencies piecemeal. You fund the things you support and you don't fund the things you don't like. We have a Department of Homeland Security. It was created in the wake of 9/11. Democrats are operating like it's September 10th, before 9/11 happened. They want to repeat those mistakes by shutting that critical department down at a heightened level of security. We've seen the terrorist attacks here on our homeland. We know what's going on, and yet Democrats have voted to shut that department down because they don't care about American people. They don't care about families. People are missing flights. People are going without pay while working. Hundreds of them have quit. TSA workers that just said, I can't do this anymore. I've got a family to feed. I've got to go get a stable job. And working for the federal government under Democrats' crazy radical chaos is just not a place where they can be. They're real victims in the Democrats' dangerous game. And now this defund the police discharge is one more example that they're not serious people. But we've got real work to do. And American people are counting on us to get the job done. And the man leading that fight to get the job done is our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Leader Scalise. I would say good morning and happy St. Patrick's Day, but it's not a happy day for so many millions of Americans. It's really a difficult one. We're on day 31 since the Democrats decided to shut the government down, the partial shutdown, this time of Homeland Security. This is now the third longest shutdown in American history. They like making history on the other side, the wrong kind. They had the longest shutdown in history last fall, as we all know, and now they've got the third. Today is a direct result of Democrats taking the Department of Homeland Security hostage in order to protect criminal illegal aliens. That's exactly what it is. Here's some of the stats. Roughly 120,000 DHS employees, including 50,000 TSA agents, are going without pay for yet another week. FEMA's ability to respond to natural disasters is increasingly imperiled. We had some big weather events, as you might have noticed, in the last 24 hours. Our agency of government that is responsible for assisting with that is being hampered. American airports obviously are reaching a breaking point, so severe that airlines are pleading with Democrats to please fund the Department of Homeland Security. It's fallen on deaf ears. 4 separate times, Republicans have voted to fully fund DHS since this chaos ensued, 4 times. And on each of those times, Democrats voted almost unanimously to block the funding. Now, instead of doing what's right and putting an end to this charade, Democrats insist on tearing the bill apart piece by piece. Their latest proposal would only partially fund DHS while stripping funding for ICE and Customs and Border Patrol. As Leader Scalise just reminded you, the discharge petition is really a petition to defund the police. Think of it. The law enforcement agencies that are the part of the Department of Homeland Security are what they are targeting. Democrats refuse to reopen TSA and FEMA and the Coast Guard and these other critical functions of government unless they can reopen our borders to illegal aliens, because that's exactly what their gambit would accomplish. This is not a serious position. It is not one that the American people agree with. As one of the primary agencies responsible for protecting the homeland, the Customs and Border Patrol plays an irreplaceable role in our national security framework. This is not a game. Our CBP agents stand on the front lines. They protect our nation against transnational crime and drugs and child trafficking, terrorist threats before they reach our communities. It is our largest federal law enforcement agency. CBP is the largest federal law enforcement agency, and any bill that strips its funding weakens our defenses against terrorist plots. It undermines the integrity of our borders, and it disrupts lawful travel through U.S. ports of entry, including the millions of American and international travelers through processed at our airports every single day. Now, it bears repeating, in just the last 2 weeks, we have had 4 jihadist attacks on American soil, all of which originated from perpetrators who were already inside the country. Every one of those attacks falls squarely under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security, and the Democrats don't want to fund it. And now they're demanding we strip funding from the very agency responsible for stopping all of that. It's another dangerous game, a political game by Democrats that's as foolish as it is perilous. I'll make one additional point. Democrats opened our borders wide to tens of millions of illegal aliens for 4 years under Joe Biden, including untold numbers of violent, hardened, and repeat criminals. That is an objective fact, and no one can refute it. They could have closed the border any time. As you all know, I pleaded with President Biden, after I became Speaker, to do it, and he pretended as though he did not have the authority to close the border. They chose that. They chose to keep the border wide open, and they looked away. And that happened until President Trump was returned to office, and obviously we secured the border in a very short number of days because the law was always there. He always had the authority. And thankfully, we got a commander-in-chief who understands national security and safety. And now when our borders are finally secure and when criminal illegal aliens are finally being held to account for breaking our laws, now the Democrats want to reverse course. They want to go back to open borders. They want to defund the agencies that are responsible for keeping law and order. And now Leader Jeffries has claimed the latest proposal to defund CBP will just allow talks to continue. But you all know, because you're tracking it every day, that's nonsense. Bipartisan talks were already underway before funding lapsed. It was Democrats who walked away from the table. They did it precisely so that they could take the Department of Homeland Security as their next political hostage. They've made a political calculation. Their polling says they're not fighting Trump enough, and so they determined that Homeland Security was the place to throw down the gauntlet. It's so crazy, it really is. And since they shut down DHS now over a month ago, we've heard nothing but political posturing from Democrat leaders. They're not serious about this. The answer is simple. They don't want to fund Homeland Security. They don't want to do it. They're perfectly content jeopardizing the security of our homeland and hurting the American people if it means protecting criminal illegal aliens. And there is no other way to explain this. Democrats have made that conscious decision repeatedly. You know them by their actions. They're doing it again. In the fall, they shut down the government to try to give taxpayer-funded benefits to illegal aliens. And now they've shut down the government once again to reopen our borders and shield criminal aliens from our own laws. The American people are not on board with this. They're not going to have broken policies. They're not going to have us return to that. The broken policies of the Biden administration, they rejected that in the election soundly. The chaos that Democrats unleashed on the country, that was a big issue. In fact, it was the #1 issue in the election of 2024. We're not going back to that. The American people are not going to go back. The Republican conference is going to work every day to ensure that we don't. I'll leave you with this thought. We'll take a couple questions. Listen, CNN had a story this week. They were talking about the Quinnipiac's latest polling, which is consistent with other polls around the country, the favorability of Democrats in Congress. They are at their lowest number in history. In fact, they're far below the lowest polling numbers in history. And the story led with lead. Democrats' favorability is lower than the Dead Sea, okay? They're at negative 55 percentage points of favorability. Negative, net 55% in the open polling. And among independents, Democrats in Congress are at negative 60%. They should just retire. They should just throw in the white towel and give us the Congress so we can fix this mess and stop the charade. This midterm election that we're coming up on is a contrast election. This is not I was talking with Newt Gingrich the other night, and you know he brought the contract with America. This is a contrast for America. That's what we have. This is common sense, the Republican Party and our policies, versus crazy. This is crazy. It's crazy. And I'll take a few questions. Yeah, from her. Well, that's not a green tie. Never mind. Over here. Go over here. Come on, all right, go ahead.
Okay, so the president has said that the Save America Act is his number one priority.
Yeah.
When making the argument to Democrats to vote yes for this, because it will require Democrat votes to pass, can you give for me one example of fraud conducted in a previous election that the Save America Act would prevent?
Look, we're not going to litigate all that. I can tell you what I'll tell Democrats. You should listen to the American people. Ostensibly, we're supposed to come here and represent the interests of the American people. This is a 90-10 issue in public opinion polling, and Democrats agree that you should be a citizen and have a photo ID to vote at a tune of about 70%. So there's no argument that you shouldn't do this. If they want free and fair elections, if they don't think fraud should be a problem, then they should vote to enforce federal law. It's already the law, as you know. It's already the law that you have to be a citizen to vote in American elections, and we should enforce that. And having a photo ID, you have to have a photo ID to do everything in American society. Why not to vote? It's ridiculous for them to oppose it. We are cheering along the Senate Republicans in trying to force this through. Hopefully, we can get this to the president's desk for signature. It's a top priority, not just for Republicans in Congress. Again, common sense versus crazy. It's crazy to say that you should not be a citizen or not have ID to vote. And it is common sense, and it comports to the American people. Go ahead, all the way down. Yeah. Thank you.
This morning, former Congressman Joe Kent, who you campaigned for when he ran for Congress, resigned as the director of the Counterterrorism Center. He wrote that he cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. He writes, Iran posed no imminent threat to our nature. It's clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. How do you respond to that and to those other Republicans who say that this war is actually putting foreign interests above domestic interests?
Well, that proposition at the end is clearly wrong. I'm on the Gang of Eight. I got all the briefings. We all understood there was clearly an imminent threat, that Iran was very close to the enrichment of nuclear capability, and they were building missiles at a pace that no one in the region could keep up with. They were far outpacing our allies and friends and us in our defense capability, because we had personnel, installations, members of the armed services, and civilians in the region. Iran was building up ballistic missiles at such a rapid pace, and we knew that their plan was to fire them upon Americans. The commander-in-chief and his administration had a very difficult decision to make. I don't know where Joe Kent is getting his information, but he wasn't in those briefings, clearly, because the Secretary of State, the Secretary of War, and everyone, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, they had exquisite intelligence, and we understood that this was a serious moment for us. Had the president waited, I am personally convinced that we would have mass casualties of Americans, service members and others, and our installations would have been dramatically damaged. And so the president felt that he had to strike first to prevent those mass casualties. That's a summary. I can't tell you the classified part, but that's the summary that's made public, and it's accurate. Yeah, Manu.
It's been more than 2 weeks since this war was launched by the United States against Iran, yet the House has not had a single public hearing with a cabinet official about the cost to American taxpayers and to American service members. Why has the House not heard testimony from a cabinet official about this war?
I don't know if you've noticed, but they've given us multiple briefings. Well, it's still, we're in the midst of a couple of weeks long operation that's very sensitive in its mission and scope, and you cannot go outside of the classified briefing to give to the public the information, because it would adversely affect our mission. They have well explained this to members of Congress in multiple briefings, both before, during, and after the operation commenced. We had the auditorium full of House members just last. The American public is getting. I've just relayed to you the summary of the non-classified information. All members are out talking about it around the clock. You're following them around with microphones, getting their clips and insights and their opinions. This is being watched very carefully, but we're in the midst of an operation that is winding down. According to the president himself, we are very close to having the mission completed. The Strait of Hormuz is an ongoing issue, and he has, I think, rightfully called upon allies and friends and other nations who depend much more than we do on the Strait of Hormuz being open for their oil supply to step up and assist and put the terrorists and tyrants at bay, because that's good for stability and calm around the world, and America stands for that, okay? We are standing for freedom. We have taken out an enemy that was seeking to do us harm and wipe Israel off the map, and that's a good thing, and it will be a great thing for the stability of prices going forward and the calm around the world. So we ask our allies to step up and acknowledge that reality and help us out. I think that's a very reasonable proposal. Jay.
Sir, on the safe, sir.
On FISA,
Yeah.
are you going to move a clean extension? Is that your plan?
My plan is to move a clean extension of FISA. As you know, FISA in Section 702 is responsible for the large measure of intelligence that we use to protect and keep Americans safe. It expires in April, and we're looking at that deadline, and hoping that we can get a clean authorization done for at least 18 months. Now, why would we go that route? Because you remember last time it was up for reauthorization, we instituted 56 substantive reforms to FISA. By every measure and review, those are working just as we planned. We've not had the abuses that were happening before those reforms, and everybody in Congress understands the necessity of ensuring that we keep the homeland safe, except for the Democrats, who, as you know, are choosing not to fund the Department of Homeland Security. One more.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. President Trump recently has said that the war in Iran will be over when he, quote, feel it in my bones. What does he mean by that?
Well, I think his bones are informed by the intelligence, okay? So, look, it's the commander-in-chief, whomever is the president, whomever is the commander-in-chief, under our constitutional system, is given a broad amount of latitude and authority. Their decisions are informed by all the intelligence and the experts, a large panel of them from the Joint Chiefs of Staff on down, who come in and advise the president. Every president makes a gut decision, and hopefully they make a prayerful decision. I think this president will as well. He's getting great advice from great people, and I'm very encouraged about where we are. I think this will wind down quickly, and it's going to be in the best interest of America going forward and of the whole world. Thank you.
At the end there, you heard a reporter asked House Speaker Mike Johnson about the news that we told you about right before we went to that just moments ago, this morning, one of the top Trump administration counterterrorism officials, Joe Kent, has the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, resigned from his position, saying that Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and saying that it is clear we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. The House Speaker pushing back on that intel that we now hear from Kent, saying that he was a part of the briefings and he disagrees. He says that there was indeed a threat potential for Americans with Iran. Now, what I'd like to do at this moment, if we can, Sarah, we just got a release from Senator Mark Warner, the Democrat here out of Virginia, and I do believe he also posted to his X account in response to the news that Kent is going to be resigning, and more importantly, what he said is the reason behind his resignation. And let's go ahead. Is there a video along with this, Sarah? Can we play it, or is it just a picture? Okay, let's see. All right, let's play the video. This is Senator Mark Warner out of Virginia responding to the news that the Trump administration's top counterterrorism official has resigned.
Trump's own counterterrorism expert, Joe Kent, just resigned because of concerns about the Iran war. He agrees with me. There was no imminent threat to the United States. So as we're in week 3, even the Trump advocates are bailing on this war of choice where gas prices are rocketing, no end in sight, and Iran in control of the Strait of Hormuz. Trump's own counterterrorism.
So there you hear from him. I'm going to see if there's anything different that he said more through his release. Let's see here. Here's what Warner said in his release. At least this is in the email that we've now received here within the newsroom, saying Joe Kent's record is deeply troubling, and in my view, he never should have been confirmed, to lead the National Counterterrorism Center. I strongly disagree with many of the positions he has espoused over the years, particularly those that risk politicizing our intelligence community. But on this point, he is right. There was no credible evidence of an imminent threat from Iran that would justify rushing the United States into another war of choice in the Middle East. Ignoring the facts to pursue a predetermined war puts American lives at risk and undermines our national security. The United States cannot be led into conflict on the basis of politics, impulse, or a president's desire for confrontation. We have seen where this road leads before. So again, that is from Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. I was just reading his statements that were sent into our newsroom following, again, Joe Kent, the now former top Trump counterterrorism official, resigning from his post, saying that he cannot support the war with Iran because he says there was no imminent threat to the United States. All right, we're going to have much more here on Live Impact News. It is 10:56 right now. We're going to take a break and come back in just a few minutes. All right, we're back here for Live Impact News. Thank you for giving us a quick moment there for a break. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back down to D.C. We're now waiting to hear from Democratic leadership of the House. They're a little bit behind right now on their press conference, but we do have this ongoing briefing that is taking place from military officials who are talking about budget and then also things that they're seeing in North and South America as issues. So we're going to go and listen into that hearing at the moment. Again, this is the House Armed Services Committee in Washington, D.C., taking place here live. We'll listen to that, and then as soon as we see maybe the Democrats coming in, as we're also monitoring the Senate floor, we told you about that, as they're looking over the SAVE Act this morning, we will go to either one. But let's start with that House Armed Services Committee hearing, Sarah.
For the first time in history, there's an administration that is putting protection of this hemisphere as a priority. And in my opinion, whether you intended it or not, I think that is very disrespectful to the men and women who served this country, lost their lives, paying the ultimate sacrifice. And it's okay to lift your guy, your administration, but there's no need to disrespect the sacrifices of those who came before. General Guillot, a lot of attention has been placed on Greenland. Already, the United States operates critical assets on the territory that support missile warning and space surveillance, and that presence exists because of decades of defense cooperation with Denmark and Greenland. Yet in recent months, we continue to hear deeply concerning and harmful rhetoric from the White House about the United States potentially taking control of Greenland, whether through acquisition or even potentially by force. Just the suggestion of invading a sovereign NATO ally has raised serious concerns amongst our partners. From a military standpoint, isn't it our strongest strategic advantage in the Arctic the fact that we already have trusted allies who allow the United States to operate critical defense infrastructure on their soil?
Congressman, I have great appreciation and respect for the leadership of Greenland and also my counterpart in Denmark that allow us to operate out of Patuxent Air Base, which is, or Space Force Base, excuse me, that you just mentioned, as well as other locations throughout Greenland that not only give the space capability that you described, but we can also operate the fighter aircraft and the tanker aircraft that give us that first line of defense against any adversary that might approach us from the north.
And Mr. Hugh Muir, I think I pronounced your name wrong. I apologize. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree, Mr. Congressman. And just to say,
I don't have a lot of time, so
sure,
I'm going to keep
Mr. Congressman, just to say the point on Greenland, just the fact that we have the 1951 treaty has allowed us to give, through partnership with Denmark, capabilities to enhance and refurbish not just the Patuxent Space Base, but other locations that we used to have during World War II to harden that security.
Okay, we're going to keep coming in and out of that particular hearing because we do have other things that are happening at the moment too. And so now we're going to go to the Democratic leadership in the House. We have there Ted Lieu, who is speaking this morning. So let's go ahead and listen to what they have to say after we just listened to the GOP leadership.
It also showed that core PCE, the Fed's inflation gauge that they prefer, increase. So we have a slowing economy, increasing inflation, and now diesel has hit over $5 for the second time in U.S. history. All of this has hurt and will continue to hurt consumers even more. And what is the response from the Trump administration? I'm going to quote for you what Director of the National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, said on national TV. He said that hurting consumers is, quote, the last of our concerns. So I want the White House to send Kevin Hassett to every single TV channel and to every single swing House district where you can tell the voters of America that hurting consumers is, quote, the last of their concerns. And that is where the administration is. They don't care about the American consumer. They don't care about people who can't make ends meet. And we're going to see what happens this November. I also now want to talk a little bit about the Iran war. I'm going to go back to a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing. We have a Department of Defense witness for acquisitions, and we have a problem in terms of a missile shortage. How do we know we have a missile shortage? Because the president called an emergency meeting earlier this month with all the top defense contractors talking about increasing missile production. Lockheed has said they are going to quadruple missile production. Well, that's great. Let me just give you some numbers. Right now, they make 8 THAAD missiles a month for a total of 96 the entire year. So even if you quadruple that, it's not a lot. It goes up to about 400. And you know how long it's going to take them to do it? In their own press release, 3 years. So that's where we are. And then you have Iran that has over 80,000 drones by some estimates and other ballistic missiles. And so they're launching all of this at U.S. bases, at allied countries, and we're firing THAAD missiles and Patriot interceptors. The cost of one Patriot interceptor is $4 to $4.5 million per missile. The cost of one THAAD missile is about $12 to $15 million per missile. The cost of an Iranian drone could be as low as $20,000. This is like launching Cadillacs at baseballs. It is not sustainable. And so I urge the Department of Defense and the administration to come up with a plan to Congress as how they can sustain not only this war, but any future war, because clearly there's a huge mismatch between the weapons that the Department of Defense has and what our adversaries are able to launch at America and our allies.
Thank you, Vice Chair Liu. Questions? Max?
You led off by describing the Iran war as unilateral. A lot of your colleagues have described it as illegal. It's clear there's huge democratic frustration with the president's actions here. Do you think that what the president has done with regards to the war in Iran could rise to the level of impeachment? And have you heard any conversations about that with your colleagues in the caucus?
No, I think that this is the president has made this action unilaterally. He has not asked for the world to buy into this. He has not asked for Congress to buy into this. So he owns all of it. But look, the impeachment piece is a distraction that nobody is talking about here with respect to Iran. What we've asked for is the president to come to Congress to show us a plan. What is your plan? What is your strategy? How do we get out of this? We're in week 3. The president said we already won. Mike Johnson saying we're winning. It's almost done, right? It seems like they're always a few hours away from hanging the next mission accomplished sign around here, and we continue to suffer. And now we're going to be stuck with the bill. And now they're talking about, right? There was rumors of $50 billion bill that they were going to send to Congress. Now they're going to, may wrap it into, reconciliation. I mean, the frustration House Democrats have is that there is no plan or strategy. The administration, enabled by House Republicans, are just going day to day. This is like the Kevin McCarthy strategy, like survive the day is all they want to do. And it's unfortunate. It's dangerous for the American public. It's weak, and it's just wrong. And so that's what House Democrats have been saying and will continue to say throughout. Nick?
Speaker Johnson up here just said that Republicans are going to try to move a clean FISA extension. Is that something you can see Democrats supporting?
We have a classified briefing, I believe, tomorrow. I want to defer to Jim Himes and the Intelligence Committee, our judiciary counterparts who are kind of weighing into this. We want to know, House Democrats want to know, how have the reforms that we enacted a few years ago, how have they gone? What data do they have to back that up? Obviously, generally, a clean CR is a path of least resistance. That is what people can gravitate to, but I think many of us want to understand how the law has been implemented in the recent past before we, take firm positions. We'll get the classified briefing. We'll weigh in. If there are reforms that make sense for FISA, then I think there would be a willingness to look at those, but I understand the math is incredibly hard for the Speaker. Counting votes and passing things is difficult for him. So, we'll see what the future holds.
I'm just speaking for myself personally. There's no way I will support a clean FISA extension. There is no way I'm going to give the Trump administration this mass surveillance authority. And it's not just the Trump administration, it is any administration, Democratic or Republican. And let's just look at what recently happened. There was a massive blow up at Department of Defense with Anthropic because Anthropic did not want their AI large language model to be used for mass domestic surveillance. The Department of Defense and Anthropic disagreed on that. The NSA is within the Department of Defense. And so the Department of Defense clearly has signaled they want to use AI for mass domestic surveillance. And there's no way whatsoever that FISA, in my opinion, I'm not going to vote for the clean extension. And so that's where I am.
That's one Judicial member that I think they know where he stands. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The President signed an executive order yesterday establishing a task force on fraud that J.D. Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance, will lead. The administration highlighted some states with high-profile fraud allegations, including California. Since both of you all are California Democrats, I wanted to ask if you thought the administration is using legitimate oversight concerns as a pretext to target blue states and potentially restrict access to, safety net programs like SNAP and Medicaid. Do you think that this is a pretense for them to further restrict these programs that you say were attacked in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. This is, I'm curious to see the full list of the states that are involved, but
California, Minnesota, Illinois, New York, Maine, and Colorado.
Yeah, shocking that those are blue states, blue governors that they're going after. But this is just part and parcel of what the administration continues to do. We still have closer to the vice chair's district than mine. We have areas that were ravaged by a federal disaster that the administration has not owned up to the responsibilities to help assist. They are willing to hurt people. Whether it's Kevin Hassett talking about the consumers, which are you, the public, or people who suffer from a natural disaster. They are willing to have you hurt or suffer and have less resources just because you live in a blue state. It's wrong. It's not how Democratic administrations have operated in the past. I think thankfully for us, J.D. Vance has a hard time, doing any job. But we'll see. Look, if there's legitimate waste, fraud, and abuse, Democrats are always willing to engage and have conversations. There is a process to do that. There's inspector generals when the administration doesn't get those. There's inspectors general who can weigh in, provide reports to Congress, GAO reports that give us guidance where we can make these programs better. But this is just an effort to penalize blue states. It's incredibly transparent. The American public sees it. The president's just trying to give J.D. Vance a job to do, probably so he doesn't speak out against the Iran war, but that's just where we are.
Thank you, Chairman. The Senate is moving forward with the SAVE Act this week, and polling shows a majority of Americans support requiring voter ID to vote. Are you concerned that Democrats might be on the wrong side of the issue on this?
No, not at all, because it isn't just about voter ID. This is about turning your information over as a voter to Homeland Security. This is about requiring women who don't have their voter rolls matching their birth certificates, many who have been married. This is requiring those women to get an affidavit in order to vote. This is about making it more difficult for people to vote. This isn't the SAVE Act. This is the Save Republicans Act. And that's exactly what they're engaging in. Now they've spun this whole tale to their supporters and their friends. And so now you see the MAGA universe is pushing back because they have, they believe this. They believe that this can be done. They believe the president when he says this is the top priority. They believe the president when he says I'm not going to sign anything else until I sign the SAVE Act. They have bought into it. But this isn't just, we need to be honest with the American public as well, that this isn't just about providing an ID. This is about what states' rights are. Republicans used to be the party of states' rights. Now they're the party of nationalizing the election. And this is about states being able to make decisions for themselves. There are states that require an ID. There are states that are more restrictive on vote by mail. That is part of the process. Overwhelmingly, the data shows people support their local communities and their states running their elections. Overwhelmingly. Right? So why would we want to change that? Why would Donald Trump want to do that in this mid-year, leading into this midterm election? It's because Republicans know the only way they win, the only way Mike Johnson continues to be speaker, is if fewer people vote, if ballots are sent back, if they stop allowing mail-in ballots, if they stop allowing people, everybody who is able to vote, giving them the access to vote. That's how Republicans win. And so that's why they're wanting to, they're willing to spend 5 days debating, or whatever it's going to end up being, debating this bill that isn't going to become law.
And we'll see about that, right? We'll see what happens if the SAVE Act will indeed become law or not. But right now we want to go to the Senate. We were just hearing from House Democrats. How about we go to the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, hear him from the Senate floor.
Not surprising, I suppose, from Donald Trump. The senior senator from Utah says Republicans will lose power, likely for a long time, if we don't get Save America passed. It's funny. I don't remember MAGA Republicans screaming about stolen elections and voter fraud after the 2024 election that they won. Well, the same rules that govern the 2024 election are going to be the ones that govern the 2026 election. The only difference is that this time, MAGA Republicans know they're in trouble politically. So now they're suddenly saying the system's compromised and broken and it needs to be changed. It's all lies, all lies. And they want to drag down the entire Senate for who knows how long in a vain attempt to pass this bill. Let's be clear. Senate Democrats will never allow the SAVE Act to pass this chamber. They should. If a small band of MAGA senators wants to drag this out on the Senate floor, keep us here through the night, through days or longer, while stalling all other important business, they can try. It will not work. MAGA Republicans, Senate Democrats will hold the line as long as necessary, because with this bill, democracy is at stake. And I want to be very clear. The SAVE Act is not about voter identification. It's about voter suppression. Under the SAVE Act, every single state would be required to share its voter rolls with the Department of Homeland Security, something even many Republican states do not want to do. Those rolls would be reviewed by a system designed by none other than Elon Musk and his Doge, using an algorithm that has already been shown to be deeply flawed. Millions will be kicked off the rolls for no reason. This means American citizens, many millions, would be booted off the rolls wrongly. And if you're kicked off the rolls, you may never be told. There's no requirement to let you know. Then when you show up on Election Day ready to vote and a poll worker tells you, sorry, you're not registered, you're not in the system, what do? You can't re-register that day, especially with the onerous requirements for registration in the SAVE Act. And it's not just, as I said, it's not just as simple as re-registering. Under the bill, Americans would have to run through an obstacle course of red tape unlike anything we have ever seen in voter registration. A driver's license would no longer be enough. A military ID would no longer be enough. You would need something like a passport, which most Americans do not have, or a birth certificate, which many Americans cannot easily find. And if you cannot produce these documents, you could be out of luck, even if you're an American citizen with every right to vote. That is almost certainly the majority, the vast majority of who would be thrown off the rolls. Meanwhile, say goodbye to some of the safest, most convenient, and most effective ways to register to vote. No more registering online, no more registering at churches, no more registering at college campuses, no more registering at the DMV, no more registering by mail, no more vote by mail. Many red states love votes by mail, and yet MAGA radicals want to eliminate it almost entirely. I ask my Republican colleagues, how does it protect our elections to stop people from registering at a church or at the DMV? How does it make our democracy safer to tell seniors, people with disabilities, or working Americans they cannot register online and must find their way to an election office, something only a fraction of Americans do today, 5.9% to be more precise? How does getting rid of vote by mail, something red states do, something blue states do, strengthen democracy? The answer is it does not. The SAVE Act is not about election integrity. It is about voter suppression, plain and simple. MAGA Republicans would rather take democracy down than back away from their own right-wing extreme policies that have killed jobs, started wars, exploited working people to benefit the ultra-rich. Senate Democrats will not let them succeed. I tell my Republican colleagues, hear me, we will hold the line for as long as it takes. Iran. Each day brings more evidence that Donald Trump has no idea what he's doing in Iran. Yesterday, the president effectively admitted his administration badly miscalculated Iran's responses to his attacks. As he put it, they hit Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, and Kuwait. Nobody expected it. We were shocked. They fought back. Comments like that show that Donald Trump is in over his head. The old saying goes, if you break it, you buy it. Well, Donald Trump, you broke it badly, and now you're trying to get out of paying the price. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively shut down. Oil prices continue to rise. Yesterday, we learned that about 200 American troops have now been injured in this conflict. 13 service members have made the ultimate sacrifice. We pray for them, their families, and for everyone in harm's way. But again, I repeat to Donald Trump, if you break it, you buy it. Donald Trump broke it badly, and now he is trying to get out of paying a price. Donald Trump promised this would be over in a matter of days or weeks. Well, we're now in week 3. There is still no sign this war is close to ending. In fact, despite severe blows, most reporting suggests Iran's regime remains intact and has hardened rather than collapsed. This war needs to come to an end. In the meantime, I repeat what I said last week. Donald Trump's cabinet must come before the Senate. We need public hearings. We need to hear Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, and others under oath and answer tough questions. They need to answer some very basic questions. Why are we at war? What is the objective? Will there be American boots on the ground? How exactly do they plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and what is the exit strategy? Right now, we do not have answers to the questions that should be easy for any competent administration to answer, and that should alarm every one of us. And finally, on energy costs. Later today, Senator Heinrich, White House, and I will release the most comprehensive Senate report to date on Donald Trump's broken promise to lower energy costs. This is the third major pillar in Democrats' year-long effort to present a lower-grade agenda to the American people. Lower costs and lowering costs will remain our North Star all year long. Donald Trump might think affordability is a hoax. He might be fixated on foreign wars. But Democrats understand the cost of living is the #1 issue on people's minds. When it comes to energy prices, the story is very simple. Donald Trump promised he would cut the price of energy in half in his first year. Well, 14 months have passed, and not only are energy prices up, they're rising roughly 3 times the rate of inflation. That is not sustainable. Our report explains in detail why this is happening. Donald Trump chose to help his friends in the big oil lobby instead of helping American families lower their energy bills. He has waged war on clean energy, the cheapest and fastest source to build and get electrons on the grid. And now Americans are paying the price that he cut clean energy, all because contributors, many contributors, Harold Hamm, hate clean energy because they know it's the future, not oil and gas that they claim should be the only route to go. When he was running for office, Donald Trump promised oil executives at Mar-a-Lago Harold Hamm among them, that if they gave him $1 billion for his election, he'd give them a great deal in return. Now he's making good on that bargain. His so-called big, beautiful bill has destroyed clean energy jobs across the country and raised taxes on clean energy. He has weaponized the federal government to undermine 35 clean energy projects that could have powered 14 million homes, supported 170,000 jobs. And at the same time, Trump's war with Iran has pushed up the cost of gasoline and diesel. His tariffs have raised the cost of material needed to produce energy here at home. So, after more than a year, the pattern's very clear. Donald Trump has systematically destroyed investments in energy production, favored big oil over working families, and raised costs on households by killing the cheapest and fastest sources of new energy: solar, wind, battery storage. The American people are paying the price for Trump's broken promises. I thank Senators Heinrich and Whitehouse for their tremendous work on this report. We'll have more to say later today and in the weeks ahead. I yield the floor.
Okay, there you have it from the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. And one thing that really stood out to me at the beginning, obviously, he said, listen, when it comes to the SAVE Act, Democrats in the Senate will not allow this to move forward. Of course, he's talking about garnering the 60 votes, I assume, that will be needed in order for it to pass, saying that that will not take place. We are going to take a quick break here. It is 11:26, so we'll be back in just a few moments with more from Live Impact News. All right, welcome back here, Live Impact News. Hey, I told you that we've been watching and monitoring a House Armed Services Committee hearing taking place in Washington, D.C., in which military officials have been talking about budgeting, but also some of the issues affecting North and South America. I want to take you now to the moments ago that Virginia Beach Congresswoman Jen Kiggans, who was on this particular committee, had some questions for those who are being questioned and on the panel. So, Sarah, if we can cue that up, I will let the Congresswoman take it from there.
Back here, I recognize the gentlelady from Virginia, Ms. Kiggans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our panelists for being here and for your service to our great country. I have the privilege of representing Virginia's 2nd District, so Hampton Roads, home to our East Coast Navy. But this past week, we had a tragedy occur at one of our college campuses. We had a shooter who walked into Old Dominion University and targeted our Army ROTC students there. And we know that this shooter had known terrorist ties to ISIS, and the fact that he was walking around openly on the streets of our city is very infuriating to me. Part of the problem is state law. We have in Virginia that colleges and universities cannot vet criminal histories of people who are admitted to their campuses. But the reason I bring this up is because I'm worried about the terrorist cells that are in this country. We saw 14 million people walk across that southern border during the last administration. We know that there are people in this country that want to do our country harm, and that was on full display in Virginia this past week. So I'd like to hear from you. I know we've talked a lot about drug trafficking and cartel activity and how that activity has changed, with the change of administration here in Washington. So what about terrorist activity? Do you feel like that has that gotten any better or worse? Are we charting that as well? Because I still have those same concerns that not only are they here, but they continue to be in places to the north and to Central and South America as well. So if I could hear from General Guillot and then General Donovan.
Congresswoman, I share your concern. One of the important roles I think that I have as the NORTHCOM commander is to ensure that there is not a seam between Homeland Defense and Homeland Security that could be exploited by an adversary. Therefore, that in cooperation with the intel agencies, federal law enforcement, and also Special Operations Command, SOCOM, we host a CT summit every year where we look at that seam to make sure that anything that the law enforcement community knows, the military knows, and anything that primarily CENTCOM and SOCOM know from overseas on operations that could come into the homeland is known by all of us. The result of that last summit that both Admiral Bradley and I co-hosted was that the homegrown terrorist is probably our biggest threat, because there are so few indicators of those individuals until they actually take action. On those that are actually directed by another terrorist agency, we usually see that, for instance, an ISIS or an Al-Qaeda directed, but the homegrown, we don't. And so we work very closely with FBI and others to try to find any indications that we can of that. And again, to close, I share your concern, because I think that is our biggest threat.
Great, thank you.
Congresswoman, thank you. I believe the Southcom role is to be that forward area defense for the United States of America. So we participate in the same types of forums that General Guillot mentioned. We submit on conjunction with U.S. Special Operations Command a CT risk assessment, where we look at that global risk, and then where does that global risk reside? Those entities reside in South America, Central America, the Caribbean, to ensure that we're part of that same discussion, and when capable and with the right authorities, we can act on those threats before they actually make it into the homeland. So very much linked through U.S. Special Operations Command.
Thank you. Well, thank you for paying close attention to that issue. In addition to the constant, increase of terrorist threats and to the north and to the south, we know that China continues to make inroads, and we saw their Belt and Roads Initiative that's really spread to Central and South America, especially. And it was interesting. We visited New Zealand last year, and listening to them talk about that, where China goes in and tries to make these improvements in the communities, but they turn out to be, cheap improvements, and they are not well respected. Kind of at the end of the work that they're doing. So I'm just curious if the progress that the Chinese have made, especially Central and South America, where we heard they're trying to come into those communities. Are those communities welcoming, or are they a little more suspicious now of that kind of Chinese, integration into their space?
Congresswoman, thank you for highlighting that. As mentioned in the opening statement, very concerned about their Chinese ability to get in and create infrastructure projects that are clearly dual use. We mentioned we have 23 port projects we're watching right now, and 12 space sites. We call them space enabling capabilities that are on the, especially in the southern cone, the southern portion of South America. I think you hit the nail on the head, Congresswoman, that often, as we've seen in places I've served in before, especially in Djibouti, I've watched the Chinese influence in Djibouti, and then you see 10 years later that they're very, it's
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentlelady from Virginia, Ms. Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very proud to represent Maryland, but always proud to follow my colleague from Virginia. It's okay. We have very similar interests. Very similar interests. Thank you. Thank you to our gentleman for being here. I'm going to.
We were just listening there to Congresswoman Jen Kinkins here from Virginia Beach. It was very, I thought, interesting and timely, obviously, for her to ask a question there about the threats that we have seen reported and now are being discussed here in the homeland, particularly those like what we saw happening at Old Dominion University last week. We were on the air for several hours last Thursday in the moments in which it broke that there was a gunman who we now know has previous ties and criminal history to attempting to help ISIS, who walked onto Old Dominion University's campus into one of its academic buildings and shot and killed an ROTC instructor, Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw, and then also injured other ROTC students inside of that classroom, targeting them. To hear her question is one in which I think a lot of people now are moving forward and saying, what can we do? What can possibly take place to maybe prevent this from happening again, to catch and target and make sure that these individuals aren't able to do that? So hearing the heart of her question there, she's been very vocal on social media as well about the fact that this individual was able to be within our community after serving time, being previously convicted, after pleading guilty, as I said, to attempting to help ISIS, and then obviously getting his hands on a gun illegally. And so there's going to be a lot of questions moving forward, and as we go through, you're going to hear from people like Higgins and others to try to make sure something like that cannot happen again. But that was a few moments ago. We just saw that she was speaking. We wanted to make sure that she had the floor to our viewers. Now, let's see if we can go to it live in this moment. We'll catch up on that conversation again. The hearing is still ongoing there in Washington, D.C. The House Armed Services Committee speaking to military personnel, some budgeting issues, but a lot of looking at some of the concerns and things that are going on in the Western hemispheres, so Northern and South America.
Congressman, I would focus on two. One of them you just mentioned, which is the ensuring that all the forces are trained and equipped with the equipment that it takes to operate in those harsh environments. The other is we have to actually do that training. And so we just completed Arctic Edge, which is exercise in Alaska, which is traditionally held during the period of the year with good weather. And I intentionally moved it back into February, March. So we would have the air crew and the maintainers operating and preparing aircraft to work in those harsh environments, and we're learning a lot. The second part is the forces that are in Alaska, in Minnesota, in Michigan, Upper New York are all very good at operating in that environment. But if they push forward in a conflict to another region, their backfill is probably a unit that is not used to that. And so I'm trying to identify within the services the specific units that require that type of training so they can do that. And the last thing I'll point out very quickly is I'm working very closely with General Steve Nordhaus, who's the chief of the National Guard Bureau, on increasing in the U.S. our training opportunities so we don't always have to do it in Alaska, so we can do it in Minnesota, Michigan, and New York, and expand the opportunities for stateside units to get that Arctic-type training.
Great to hear that. So a little bit more depth on this. So how does Northcom assess the effectiveness of its current Arctic training and testing programs? Can you describe the importance of improving these capabilities? You alluded to it a little bit, but we in Minnesota are looking forward to continuing to grow and work with increasing capabilities, testing, range. We have the resources, we have the deep water, we have, it's on the homeland, right? So this is something that we can control. And so just maybe a little bit more about, kind of what are the metrics that you use to measure the effectiveness?
Congressman, what I use is their ability to come quickly and operate inside of one of our operational plans. And I would say the best we have is our Special Operations Forces. We have identified units that go up there and train regularly and expand their mission, not only in Alaska or in the northern part of the U.S., but also into Greenland. And I don't mean this as a criticism, but the Air Force is probably the most challenged because most of, so many of the bases are in the southern part of the U.S., and so many of the U.S. Air Force units have been on rotation in the Middle East for years and years, and that's the environment where they've gotten their most training. And so I'm working very closely with General Wilsbach and his staff to get more of the Air National Guard and regular Air Force units trained in the Arctic environment.
That's great to hear. Minnesota is open for business. We welcome you. You bring the jets, we'll bring the cold weather and the climate that will provide our warfighters the awesome opportunity and training. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for your service. And Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Mr. Vasquez from New Mexico for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Guillot, General Donovan, and Assistant Secretary Hugh Meyer, thank you for being here today. Over the past month, there have been several incidents that have caused myself and other members of Congress to question the Department of Defense's ability to coordinate effectively with other U.S. agencies. On February 11th, the FAA shut down the El Paso airport and airspace with no warning to local officials, residents, or lawmakers such as myself. The FAA said the airport and airspace would be closed for 10 days, citing special security reasons. As the Southern New Mexicans that I represent woke up to this sudden news, absolute chaos and confusion ensued. The public, myself, and other members of Congress were left in the dark, wondering if there was a more serious threat that we were unaware of, as was originally indicated, which led to widespread speculation and misinformation. After Representative Escobar and I launched a congressional inquiry, the airport quickly reopened, but for multiple days we received conflicting information from the Department of Defense, Fort Bliss officials, DHS, and the FAA as to exactly what had happened. FAA staff told my office the temporary flight restriction was pre-planned, but the FAA administrator instead tweeted that there was an active threat. Then we learned it was related to DoD technology in the hands of Border Patrol after an explanation of shooting down a party balloon. Meanwhile, nearly half of the flights out of El Paso that day were canceled, with thousands of people affected by this incompetence. Overnight, medevac flights were suspended. A similar incident happened only 2 weeks later when the DoD accidentally shot down a CBP drone after CBP failed to notify the department of an ongoing exercise. This led to the FAA issuing a temporary flight restriction over Fort Hancock that still remains in place today. Assistant Secretary Hugh Meyer, can you explain where exactly the breakdown of communication was between the Department of Defense and the FAA?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. Over the last 14 months, the department has had several iterations of communications and coordination with the FAA, specifically on the capabilities that you're referencing. Those consultations have to do with the capabilities, the risks, the associated vulnerabilities that can be associated with that system. In respect to the specific instances that happened recently, a lot of that was in lack of coordination with the Department of Homeland Security. Now, I'm happy to report that since that incident, we've been able to streamline a lot more of that coordination three agencies, Department of Homeland Security, Department of War, as well as the FAA, and looking to improve on that process as we move forward.
Well, thank you, Mr. Humeyer, but let's zone in on that lack of coordination with the Department of Homeland Security. That's what I was looking for. What failed? What was the lack of coordination?
Well, I'd have to defer to the Department of Homeland Security because that's their coordination with the FAA, not ours.
Okay. I want to move briefly now to talk about some of the counter-UAS technology that is being tested. Both of these incidents involved counter-drone high-energy lasers, which is technology whose effects on people, the environment, and other U.S. assets aren't completely known yet. I believe this is what the FAA was concerned about and what likely contributed to them issuing these shutdowns and flight restrictions. Reporting suggests that these tests are some of the first known domestic use of a counter-drone laser system conducted outside of a controlled environment. Assistant Secretary Humeyer, how has the department determined that these types of drones were ready at the time to be tested outside of a controlled environment, and what are the possible risks to civilians and other U.S. assets?
So the high-energy laser system, Congressman, that you're referring to, is something that detects at a very meticulous level whatever aerial threats that can be presented, particularly as they relate to unmanned aircraft systems. So in the case of the incidents that you're talking about that happened in recent weeks, the system worked. It actually took out what it detected could be a potential threat, not mitigating any vulnerabilities or mitigating any vulnerabilities that would be present to larger aircraft or civilian uses of other.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary. And I think that's the important thing where the coordination has to be in place with the respective agencies, with DHS and FAA. Just what you mentioned, that if there is no imminent threat, especially to commercial airliners, that needs to happen before we shut down international airspace. It's been about a month since Representative Escobar and I sent a letter requesting a specific briefing on this issue and what led to the sudden closure of the El Paso airport. We have not received any response. Is this something you can commit to, a briefing for myself and Congresswoman Escobar?
Congressman, happy to take that back and get back with your office within appropriate time.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, I'd like you to pay special attention to recent letters submitted to state and federal offices by 5 Texas sheriffs regarding the proposed border wall project in Big Bend National Park. Please take heed from local law enforcement and consider their advice. Mr. Humeyer, does the Department of Defense or the administration plan to dignify these sheriffs with a response?
Again, I'm happy to take that back. This is the first time I'm hearing about it, so I'd have to coordinate with my office and have a response for you in short time.
Thank you, Mr. Humeyer. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, the chair.
Okay, right now let's head to, can we pull up News 1 Channel 4 for us? Actually, no. Because let's do News 1 Channel 1, because I do believe at the moment we have Rob Whitman, who is answering questions right now. Oh, we can't take it? Okay, that's fine. So let's go to News 1 Channel 1 at least to see.
Oh, wait, he's around here.
There we go. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, anytime we have our local electeds in these formats, we want to make sure that we can hear from them. So let's see, can we hear from them at this moment? Sarah, are we able to take them? Okay.
On that, and also want to ask you, too, about the importance of proliferated sensor networks. In last year's NDA, I was able to get a section in there that talked about using these sensor networks that are already at our civilian airports and making sure that we integrate them into DoD data systems so we have a much broader perspective about what's happening, especially in our efforts to counter unmanned aerial systems there. Can you give us an update on where NORTHCOM and NORAD are in using that sensor data that comes from our civilian airports through the FAA in order to get a more complete picture of counter-UAS efforts and UAS threats?
Yes, Congressman. On the sensors, I would point out also in El Paso, they're the leaders, I think, that we've seen in taking a variety of sensors and tying them together into a comprehensive picture. And so I think it's through the University of Texas, El Paso. They have a really great system that we are using as a baseline to get us first in the southern border area, the 1,954 miles that constitute the southern border, and tying that together for the first time. Obviously, with radar and manned aircraft, we have that, of course, all over the world, but for UAS along the border. And so we'll continue to work with that. We've made a lot of progress in the last year, and I would expect that to continue exponentially in the future. Regarding the flyaway kit, thanks to this body and others in Congress, we have a flyaway kit. It's, I won't say where, but it's currently deployed in the U.S. to defeat threats to Department installation that are seeing incursions, and it's operating very effectively. Also last year, I asked for 4 improvements to counter UAS authorities, all of which were granted over the year. So at this point in time, I have 0 requests for additional authorities, and we should get 2 more of the flyaway kits in the next month.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
General Donovan, we know how important our ARGMUs are. That's presence around the world for emergency response, for human needs, you name it, disasters, we're there on station. And we know that the ARGMU 3.0 requirement, that is being able to generate 3 ARGMUs, is incredibly important. Our amphibious ready groups, Marine Expeditionary Units, are key to our ability to project power around the world. We've seen that happening now there in Southcom. We see there with the 22nd MU and the Iwo Jima ARGMU or ARG, how important that presence is. I wanted to get your perspective on how things are underway there with this ARGMU. We know that ARGMU deployments, like everything else, are limited, so there's only so long they can stay before we have to bring those Marines and sailors back home. The challenge is needing that presence there. What's going to happen when the 22nd MU comes back home and the Iwo Jima ARG comes back home? Will there be another ARGMU to replace that? How important it is for that replacement to take place? And what will happen if we don't have an ARGMU that can replace the current on-station Iwo Jima and the 22nd MU?
Congressman, thank you for highlighting and recognizing the importance of that ARGMU team. Really, if you think about off of the coast of Venezuela, 12 nautical miles out, like you mentioned, the Iwo Jima, I think about the capabilities we all focus on. It could be strike aircraft, or it could be that quick reaction force. I think about a Roll 2 surgical suite that is available to respond to the ambassador's needs at any time. That's unique. So as we look at the ended time, if we extend that ARGMU, which I've asked to extend the ARGMU for a couple more months, after that, what are the creative, tailored solutions we can make to make up for a lack of, like you said, that 3.0 ARGMU presence we call heel to toe. When one goes out, one comes in. Until we get to that point, we'll have gaps, and those are significant gaps, because that ARGMU is the true Swiss Army knife inside the department.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr.
Okay, we just wanted you to be able to listen to Rob Wittman. We're going to pivot here quickly now to the White House, where we see President Donald Trump on this St. Patrick's Day meeting with the Irish Prime Minister in the Oval Office. But right now, reporters are asking the president questions. So let's go ahead and listen in live.
NATO allies were very important that we take out the nuclear threat from Iran, and we've done that very strongly, very powerfully. We've wiped out their Navy, wiped out their military in every aspect. Their Air Force is now decimated. They have no Air Force, no Navy. They have no radar. Their radar is entirely gone. Their anti-aircraft machinery is gone. Everything is gone. Their leaders are gone. I guess one of their top person was, they say, a lot of people say their actual top was killed yesterday, along with somebody else who was responsible for the killing. The man that was responsible for the killing of 32,000 people over the last 2 weeks, he was in charge of the killing of protesters. It's an evil group. I mean, they've killed much more than 32,000 people. And the man who was responsible for that was also killed yesterday. And all of the NATO allies agreed with us, but they don't want to, despite the fact that we help them so much. We have thousands of soldiers in different countries all over the world, and they don't want to help us, which is amazing. I mean, amazing. And I didn't do a full court press because I think if I did, they probably would be. But we don't need help. That war has been long prosecuted, as far as I'm concerned, almost from day one. We knocked out many of these things. We knocked out the Navy essentially in a couple of days. But I was surprised to see that NATO, while they agreed that it was a very important thing to do, they agree fully. Nobody said, oh, you shouldn't do it. 1 month of when we had the B-2 bombers bomb the nuclear potential, the I call it the nuclear dust. So I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake. And I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test, because we don't need them, but they should have been there. The other thing is, and I think, very important, we didn't have to be there for Ukraine. Biden chose to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine. And I guess the head of Germany just made a statement that, well, they weren't involved and they have nothing to do with the war. But at the same time, they think we did a great thing by knocking them out. Nobody wants to have Iran, or anybody, but nobody wants to have Iran with a nuclear, because these people are crazy. They're absolutely crazy, and they're vicious, violent. I mean, think of it. They killed, now I hear it's about 41,000 people. They put out a notice 2 days ago. Anybody that protests will be immediately shot and killed. That's pretty tough stuff. So everyone agrees with us, but they don't want to help. And we as the United States have to remember that, because we think it's pretty shocking.
President Macron has just said in the last hour that he will never join a task force in the Strait of Hormuz until hostilities finish. Yet yesterday you said...
Who said that? Who said?
President Macron of France. What's your reaction to that, sir?
Well, he'll be out of office very soon, so we'll have to see. I don't know.
Mr. President, on Doonbeg, you're building an extension to it at the moment, but there's been an objection put in, and it's being held back at the moment due to small snails. What are you disappointed about that?
Planning Commission is
I have not heard that. No.
Mr. President.
I mean, the course was built and it's been operated very successfully. Somebody's objecting. Human and Environmental Group is objecting to.
Mr. President.
How close the U.S. to announce a coalition of willing to secure the Strait of Hormuz? Which countries are joining and which countries have...
Well, we've had great support from the Middle East. Qatar has been great. UAE has been been great. Saudi Arabia has been terrific. Bahrain has been very good. The Middle Eastern countries have been very strong in their support. And of course, Israel has been our partner. Israel's been very, very strong, along with our operation. Against Iran. If you look back ago, I talked.
Okay, it seems like our audio is going in and out there on that feed at the moment, but you're listening to the president there in the Oval Office as he's meeting with the Irish Prime Minister there, and getting questions about the latest here in Iran. And obviously someone is in there going to be has been asking about the latest resignation as well from the Trump administration, the top counterterrorism officer saying that he could no longer be in his position because he did not agree with the war, saying that there was no imminent threat to the U.S. So the president obviously will be talking about that at some point as well. But we are out of time at this point. It's 11:59, and we got to end this stream. But stick with us here on 13 News Now Plus, because up next we have 13 News Now at noon with Ashley Smith. And then again at 1 to 3, you'll have another live Impact News stream. That will be with Connor Reel and Nia Campbell. Sarah and I will be back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thanks for joining us.